Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Caitlin from Florals.com and today I'm back with my card making for Scrapbookers series with Sara Scraps. And this month we are tackling acetate for our main card making components. Now I do have a lot out here. I have some things that are half acetate, half non-acetate. So that includes these frames. They have acetate inserts to kind of put over photos. Essentially that's what they were made for. I think these are by Crate Paper and I have a couple of those. And then those also came with some regular acetate pieces. I think this was like some superhero themed thing with a POW. And then this one's got some action scenes. We have some different orange items. So there's that. I have a couple Project Life ones that I had laying around. These ones are colored acetate, so that's kind of fun. This one belongs to the Crate Paper. I do have this random Valentine's-y thing. This one has little hearts behind it, different shaped ones, sweet, another heart, and then this one's like a little Polaroid. I know they're harder to see, but just kind of showing you guys what I have. I have a Heidi Swapp one. I think I have some more of these, but I know I did use a bunch of them, but I had a bunch of Heidi Swapp words. I had the, I think this was Citrus Bliss by Pink Paisley. I had these little 4x4 acetate pieces with foiling. Super fun. Pink Paisley C'est La Vie came with these number and acetate pieces. So this one's a tag. This one's a circle. Got a hexagon. And then this one I believe is from Crate Paper as well. So lots and lots of options to choose from. I know that acetate's something hard for me to work with on regular layouts, especially these larger pieces. But I do tend to use acetate when it's smaller. Like these numbers wouldn't be too hard to use. But I do think something like this would be very hard to use. But I do have an idea for this. So I'm going to get out the supplies to show you guys how I'm going to make a card with this acetate frame. So we're kind of knocking two out of one. So a frame or acetate. And then maybe we can also mix in some of these other pieces and use two pieces of acetate on one. So that would be really fun. But these are the items that I have picked out. I think this is all the acetate in my stash except for some maybe stickers. But I'm really excited to try this out. And I'll be right back with the supplies to make a card for it. Okay, so here are the supplies I pulled out to use on this card. First off, I have an 8.5 by 11, 110-pound white piece of cardstock. I like the heavier weight cardstock, and since I decided that this is already pretty much set up to be a shaker card, that we would try to make a shaker card today. I have my other acetate pieces. I pulled out this cork piece from Studio Calico. I decided that maybe I should make a birthday card for my dad or a Father's Day card, so this will be nice to use that up. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, but I think a beautiful shaker card will be awesome. I have a bunch of my Spiegel Mom Scrap sequins, some old and new ones. These are some older ones, these are some newer ones. So these two are still available in the shop, as well as the wood veneer stars, and then I'm trying to use up some of these older ones like #BoyMomLife, and then this Wild Whisper and Spiegel Mom Scraps collab sequin mix. So in addition to that, I have my foam squares. I know some people use foam tape. I prefer foam squares for the most part, especially for shakers, because I can make sure I have them all the way around. And then I pulled out this Echo Park Paper Co. 6x6 paper pad called a dog's tail. Now I do have a dog, so obviously I'll use a lot of the pattern papers for my dog layouts, but there's some beautiful basic patterns like these stripes and these polka dots that really sort of resonated with me. I have to see how they'll mix with the sequin mixes, but I might go with like one of these plain backgrounds, which luckily I don't love the other side of, so I'll be using one of those that I don't love the other side of. But there's a bunch to choose from in here. And I believe this is a relatively new release. Let's see. This is 2018, so, which is kind of crazy. I never buy things new. Look at me go. But that's what we're going to be doing today. So let's cut our card base. Now I did measure this. It is larger than 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So what I decided to do was make a 5 by 7 card, which I actually have a ton of envelopes and stuff already for. That's like the typical size you buy a card at the store. It's usually around 5 by 7. They usually make them larger because they can put more stuff on them. But that's the size I'll be cutting today. So 8.5 by 11 paper will work. What you'll need to do is take the long side and put it against your trimmer, and this side will be 10 inches and then the other side will be 7 inches. So it's going to be 10 by 7, and then when we score it at 5, it'll be 5 by 7. You might want to set that strip aside for a sentiment later, because if you're new to scrapbook or card making, there's some little details you might forget to do. Okay, so now that's 7 by 10. So we're going to take our bone folder and you're going to line this up at 5. Now I do not have a scoring board, so this is how I score mine. I simply line it up, make sure it's straight as possible, and then I go into the guard where the blade would usually go and press down. If you're using thinner paper, you might not need to score. I prefer 110 pound, but 80 pound will hold up. Not necessarily for a shaker card, but it will hold up for a normal card. And then you saw me, so I scored this way, and I'm going to push that outward so that my crease does not break on the inside, ideally. And looking at this, it's pretty straight. There's a little bit of a gap difference on each side, but you know, just put the side that's best forward. And so if you see, this will fit nicely on there. It is a little bit dirty. You can kind of see here that it came with fog. That's just the acetate's coloring. It's not actually dirty, so don't come for me on that one. Which is why I kind of wanted to put something behind it. And that will help me make my shaker itself. So let's get to making the shaker. So there's a few ways you can make a shaker element for your card. First off, you will need something to raise it up. If you just put this down right on top of your card, the sequins would bulge forward and wouldn't have anywhere to move. So that's why we have a 3D element here. I believe these squares will fit pretty nicely here. Yeah, they'll fit pretty nicely all the way around. But first I want to measure this so I can make a backer piece so that I can put my sequins in here once my foams are on the edges, and then I can seal it up. So I'm just going to grab a ruler to make sure that we get a backer piece that will work. So this is just under 6 inches by 4, so it's approximately 6 by 4, which is perfect because that's what my 6 by 6 paper pad is. So we're going to bring the trimmer back in and then pick a pattern paper from here. So I'm leaning towards that light blue because I love blue. It's really pretty. So I'm just going to pull this out. And I'm going to compare the sequins to it. We should be done with pattern paper for now, but again, totally up to you. You could add different layers behind your pattern. Like this one would work fine. The black and silver would look fine. Even this one will look fine. The greens, yellows, dark blues, and browns. And of course, this one has basically the same colors as these ones, so those work. And I did pull out some wood veneer because I thought about putting some wood veneer in the shaker itself. I haven't decided if I'm going to do that though. We'll have to see how well the foam adhesive is compared to the size of the star width, so we'll get to that later. But we want to cut this down to 6 by 4, so I'm going to cut it down to 4. Now the shaker top frame here, you'll see if I line these up, there's going to be a little bit of a cutout here, and it's a little bit too long, which is odd because it should be 6. I'm just going to trim it a little tiny bit. Like the back panel doesn't need to be straight, it just needs to cover up all the foam that we're about to put on the back of this. And I know I have to trim some off of this side. Not too much though. So when it comes to these little notches, I'm going to have to either let the blue show or I can cut around it. So I think I want to cut around it. So what I'm going to do is like line this up, and then I'm going to grab a pencil and simply just trace it out and then cut it out with some scissors. That's the easiest way to do this. I'm sure there are a multitude of ways, but going old school tracing and cutting, nothing better than that. And you can cut these a little bit larger just in case your pencil, you know, got in the way itself, or because in the end you won't see this part, so as long as it's cut out a little bit, it'll work fine. You just might have some foam adhesive exposed, but you're going to glue that down anyway, so all is good. And recycle those bits. Okay, so now if I line this up, we're good to go. Okay, so now we can start building the shaker. So first you're going to have to put all these little stickers all the way around. But if you notice, which I almost didn't, there is this adhesive that was down to hold down the acetate isn't really holding down the acetate. So we're going to go back and add more adhesive. I could probably peel this whole thing off, no problem, pretty much. So in order for our shaker not to fall apart, we're going to have to add more adhesive, which is fine, all will be good. Just got to make sure that it stays down. Some parts are staying down better than others. I think that the acetate from heat, you know, sitting around in a craft room for so long, these are a couple years old now. but adding some more adhesive doesn't hurt anybody. And this will make sure that your foam squares don't just stick to the acetate and then pull it off later. You want to make sure your frame sticks down too. Okay, so that's a lot better. So then you're going to start stacking your squares. Now when it comes to shaker cards, you want to make sure that you don't have any gaps, because then your sequins could escape. If you're doing a glitter shaker card, which is terrifying, but you can do that, you definitely want to make sure you use either one piece of foam, so you can use fun foam and cut it out, or you could use foam tape and not squares. Glitter's a scary item to work with, but it is fun to work with, so I don't blame you if you're trying. So I'm going to just line this up with squares all the way around, and then I'll visit you guys when it's fully built out. Now that I have the foam tape all the way around the outside of the frame, now you see that the variation in height among the outside of the frame due to those little notches at the top, but that's okay. As long as there's no breakage to the outside, your shakers should function perfectly. So I also peeled off all of the backs of my shaker elements just so that I can pour in the sequins and then mount it without you guys having to wait too long. But another thing you might want to do is use an anti-static powder tool to dust the inside. That will help prevent any sort of sticking of your sequins. So you can use one like this, or there's the embossing buddy. I'm just going to do a little bit in the middle just to prevent that staticky cling. Don't get it near the outside. I should have done this before I took off the backings, but you learn as you go, am I right? So just putting a little bit of that in there will help create that anti-static properties so that your sequins don't stick to the acetate when it's like upward, so they actually shake around. So now we're going to start adding in our sequins. This is a pretty shallow shaker card, so I won't need all of these sequins. I'm just going to add in a bit of each. I do, however, want to use this one as my main one. I think it matches the paper that I picked out well, and kind of gives the vibe that I want. I think this is the second sequin mix I've ever finished, so we're doing great. So that was hashtag BoyMomLife. There's a little bit left in there, and you'll see that they will jump onto your foam. You just have to monitor for that. So to get a look of how full it is, you'll just put this over it. And of course, those will all fall to the bottom. I don't think I'll be able to put any of the stars in. They are quite thick, and the foam is not. So I'm going to avoid those for now. I do want to add in a little bit of Earthy Treasure. Now I'm going to grab my sequin bowl for this, because there are some elements I don't want in there, because there are wood veneer in some of these mixes now. So just be careful of that when you're picking yours. So I'm just going to grab a little bit with my fingers, avoiding those wood pieces, and that adds in some more neutrals, even some more blue, and then some unique shapes. There's some black like petals in there as well, which I particularly love. Just grab a little bit of that. And if you guys are looking to add sequins to your collection, you can use my code Caitlin15 at the Spiegel Mom Scrap Shop to save. And if you find that you're sticking to your fingers, again, you can use the powder tool on yourself, but I find that my hands are already very dry. So what I do is just kind of touch them to another piece of acetate to kind of get rid of that. So there's that one. I think that's enough of that. I like the big sequins. That's why I pulled out that mix to get that variation. So now I have some big, large, clear sequins, and then I have these black petal sequins as well. I might add in a little bit of this. I like the brown shade in this one, and I think I'm not going to do Funky New Year, only because I don't want that metallic in there, and then I don't have black as it is, so I think I'm just going to avoid putting in black. Besides these little guys here. Now this one does have purple in it, which I do not mind for a masculine card at all. They are flowers, but they'll blend in pretty well with the background. I'm just here for the browns and blues, really. But again, you could pick those out pretty easily since they're the 3D shape in here. Okay, and I'm going to kind of mix those around just to get a little bit, because you can kind of tell that those ones that I just added had all gone to the outside edges. Oops. And again, try not to let them touch your shaker outside. And there's even a hair caught in there. Whoops. Okay, so setting those aside. Okay, now this is the fun part. So since we already know that our shaker is full, we want to be extra careful. We're going to grab our backer sheet. So make sure you have the side that you want to show on the card towards the sequins. Don't accidentally put the side you want up, because that'll cause some frustration later on, because you won't be able to really peel this off once you put the backer on. So make sure you have everything in there that you wanted. You could even have put this in there and then, or put this on here if you wanted it within the shaker. I want mine on top, so I'm gonna leave it out, but you could put things on the background before you put it in your shaker to give it a little bit more, like stamp something on here. There's lots of options. I do have some other acetate pieces I thought about putting sort of in the background, but I'm gonna put some on top, I think, of the card once it's complete. So to line this up, luckily it's a square, I'm going to line up the bottom edge and the side edges. And you can always trim this down if it peeks out, so don't worry about that. We just want to make sure that all sides are touching some sort of adhesive so that our sequins do not escape. Okay, and then make sure you press all the way down and make sure there's no bubbles, so I usually go in one direction. So you can see I have some foam sticking out there, but that should be fine. So I'm going to flip it over. How fun is that? So there are some sequins in there. But due to the acetate piece, it kind of dulls it down, and you can see some of the foam poking through, but that's perfectly fine. But how fun! This is so fun. And then this will go on top. Guys, this is coming together beautifully. Now for the actual card itself, I think I do want to pull in another pattern paper to go behind everything. Obviously my 6x6 paper pad that I pulled out won't work. I'll have to use a 12x12 paper sheet, but I'm going to go grab one. And I also think that I do want to use, like I said, I want to use one of these acetate heart pieces just to bring in a second acetate element, because that's our challenge this month. And also another note, some of the newer acetates that get released come with a protective film on them. This one I can tell has one because of the rippling effect on the front or the back. And I just want you guys to know that you might have to peel that off. I know the frames do not usually have it, but usually the die cuts do. They'll look kind of cloudy until you take that off, so just double check for that while you're working. I don't believe this one has any. This is by Crate Paper. It doesn't look that foggy. Sometimes what you can do is put a piece of adhesive on your finger and then tap it and see on the edge and see if anything comes off. But I'm going to go grab pattern paper to put in the background that kind of pulls in these sequin colors. Again, really excited with how this shaker turned out, and then we'll put together our final card. Okay friends, so I ended up pulling out this polka dot paper, which is from Pebble's Birthday Wishes line, and I think it's going to be a perfect match behind there. Kind of gives it some fun. Would work still for Father's Day or a birthday, so I'm going to glue this down to my card base. Again, this is cut to 5x7 because that's the size of my card. And again, you can make whatever size cards you want. A2 size is standard, which is 4 1/4 by 5.5, which is actually half of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. But I do some occasional different size cards. Today I went for 5x7. Then we're going to layer this on top. Now before we glue everything down, I want to make sure I like the way it's looking, make sure I don't need to trim anything. So if I look from different angles, you can see some of the foam here. I don't really mind that, especially since it's white, it kind of blends in. You know, it's a neutral. You'll see the sequins settle to the bottom, or they can go anywhere they want. So something like that. I'm not going to use this acetate piece if I can get it off there. I do want to use this heart. Debating if I should just layer it on top or if I should lay it to the side. Maybe if I paired it with like a star. I probably won't have to mail this, but if you are mailing it a card, a shaker card, try to reduce the amount of dimension as much as possible so that you don't have to worry about it getting ruined in the mail. Thinking something like that, and then if I kept using some of the stars here to kind of deck it out, it would probably come out okay, you know? Maybe a medium star instead. Something like that. Okay, so let's start gluing it together. Putting down the shaker element. So if you push down too hard in the middle, you might rip your shaker. So you want to stick to where the foam is on the outside here to start. I also wouldn't recommend liquid glue just because it could warp the background of your shaker panel here. Now if you wanted to go lightly across, you probably can, depending on what paper you used. And I want to try to center this as much as possible. That's the ideal anyway. That looks pretty good. Then you just want to firmly push it into place. And then as for attaching this, I'm going to try some tape adhesive. I think it should work okay. This is some pretty thick cork. Now you might have to use liquid adhesive, and when you use liquid adhesive on top of acetate, it does become pretty slippery, and you don't want to fog up your window too much. So kind of just keep it in one place once you have it down. Hold it there. Make sure it doesn't slip around. Now this is coming off the cork pretty easily, so I think we're going to add a tiny bit of liquid adhesive. Now when using liquid adhesive on top of cork, you can also get the spill through effect where it comes through the top of the cork. So don't put too much on the back of your cork because it will come through pretty easily because it is a porous material. So I'm just going to put some little dots about. Hopefully that will help hold it. Again, trying to center this. And I don't know if you guys knew, but this says Cool Dude at the top, which I thought was pretty funny for a Father's Day or Dad birthday card. Holding on to this because it's quite fragile. Again, trying to make sure it's centered, but if it's a little off center, we can kind of fix that with some of the decorations we pulled out. Can they be called decorations? I know usually people call them embellishments, but I like the word decorations. And don't forget, guys, that Sara is going to be doing a card as well featuring acetate, so you don't want to miss that. Now, I do want to put the heart on here. It's very Valentine's Day, which again, this could also be used for Valentine's Day. But to adhere smaller acetate pieces, I like to use a Xyron. This is a Xyron sticker maker. Now, make sure your acetate doesn't have an up and a down. I don't believe this one does. Yeah, it's pretty much the same, but I want this, maybe I want this side. I want this side down, so I'm going to put it through the way I want it facing. And essentially you pull it through here, and it will adhesive the entire back of your element. So you just want to rub around it to make sure no extra adhesive comes off. And these tools are fairly inexpensive. They do come in a variety of sizes, so beware of that when you're buying. And then you peel this off and throw away the extra. Sometimes I try to use the extra adhesive, sometimes I think it's too much of a pain. And if you peel your acetate piece off, it is now fully covered with adhesive, so you can't really tell if there's been a difference to the actual acetate piece. So I'm going to lay it down right there where I wanted it. And then pull in some of these little star elements, these rustic stars. I'm going to put that one there. And then I had a small one here and a medium one up here. So I'm going to do the same method of some tape adhesive, try that out, and if it doesn't really stick very well, then we'll go to the liquid adhesive. Now I'm covering up like this date section because I know I won't need it, but if you do need it, of course you wouldn't cover it up. Just making a little cluster here with my stars, spreading them out and about so that your eye moves around a little bit. This is a very complicated card as for elements on it. It's not your 5-minute card, but it is a simple card to make. Not too much time and energy needs to go into it, but I'm liking how it's coming out. I am going to add, I think, a couple of these sequins to the outside, just to give it, again, another second, element so it doesn't look as flat. I'm going to use liquid adhesive for this. Those will take a little bit to dry, but not too long. This way it kind of comes to life. It looks like the shakers come to life. Again, also creating that visual triangle on this card. So cards could be pretty much the same thing as the same visual rules as a layout, for example. And just make sure they're stuck into their glue. And then they'll dry pretty easily. After a little while, and then they'll be good to go. But again, if you're making a card to send in the mail, this is probably over 1/4 of an inch thick. So I would highly not recommend doing this for a card you're going to mail. But for a normal card, I think this works wonderfully. So once you decide what you want to use this for, I'd add a sentiment and note to the inside and then send it off. But for now, we have an adorable acetate-based shaker card Let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed this tutorial, let me know. Let me know if you guys have these types of frames in your stash. Maybe we'll do another series on these. But be sure to check out Sara's video linked down below, and be sure to check out the rest of my videos here on my channel. And be sure to subscribe if you're not already, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!